All right, we are live again with yet another Unpack the Stack. And so this Unpack the Stack will be still be unpacking the stack, but not super technical. We're unpacking startups and workflows and onboarding and pricing and all that fun stuff. And so with me here, I have William, my valued colleague. So William, tell us about yourself. Who are you? What do you do? All that stuff.
Yeah, thanks, Tim. And yeah, I'm happy to be on this episode of Unpack the Stack.
Thank
And
you.
as you said, I'm William. I am a senior technical product manager. That's a really long title at Uniform.
Yes, but I
And
like it.
yeah, and I'm helping to solve like all the different problems our customers have, and helping ensure they build better digital experiences using Uniform, obviously. Yeah, so that's
Obviously. There you go.
yeah, that's what I do in a nutshell. But outside that, I'm learning to fly a plane, and
Ooh,
I
awesome.
I like yeah. So yeah, I do a bunch of cool stuff, travel, and yeah, that's William.
Yeah, I really like it when I send you a Slack, you're always in another country. That's something to aspire, I guess. That's very cool.
Yeah. Um, since we work remotely and we can take work anywhere, I think that's
Exactly.
one of the good bits is to capitalize on the ability to be anywhere, at least
Yeah.
around Norway where I live.
Yeah, exactly. And I love that it's a little bit async, so you don't have to be at the same time with everybody, even though it's at
Yeah,
home, right? So we're
yeah,
relatively open. So, anyways, this stream is not about uniform, but it's generally we just get an expert in to talk about stuff that I personally don't not really know anything about. And I work at a startup, so I better know this stuff, right? And that's why we have you. And so
yeah,
what I really want to go into today is like what are the different variations that you see within the startup world with the SaaS providers especially. Like we have things like onboarding flows, and there's differences between, of course, if you have like a community driven project like something like Nuxt or maybe AppWrite or stuff like that, versus more
hmm,
enterprise related products like Content Stack, for example, or Amplience. Like there's different onboarding and there's different ways of how can you actually make sure that somebody understands what you're doing, or do they need
yeah,
to know something before, or do they explore themselves? And there's all these different approaches. And with that in mind, there's also pricing structures, and there's so much I want to know. So maybe what we can start off with is
yeah,
what are kind of the different onboarding flows that you see in the SaaS world?
yeah. Um, so thanks for that. Typically, I like to tie the onboarding of the product to the end goal of the product, right? So in a typical user journey or like a sales funnel, you would have the acquisition portion, there's the activation portion,
Yeah.
and there's the revenue portion. So when I think of onboarding, that brings a user from acquisition all the way to revenue. I think of how can I better optimize that process, or I would say how do I bring them into the application and eventually get them to convert to being paying customers, at least while I do not run a charity and they have to pay for the product.
Exactly.
Um, yeah. So with that, I started to think about what are the different pricing models, especially if it's a new product. So is this a pay per user pricing model? Is this a freemium model where they get like a free trial or a free version of the application, and then we try to upsell a paid plan to them? Is this a flat rate model where they have to pay once they get into the application? Is this usage based? So you can sign up, start using the application. Once you hit like a usage cap, then you have to pay. Or is this a license, like the really large enterprise softwares we see? So understanding the pricing model then brings me to understanding or defining how I want to shape the onboarding. So how much information do I need to collect of the user
Oh yeah.
during onboarding? Is this a freemium model where there's zero commitment upfront? Just give me your email. We send you right into the app. You can try stuff, and throughout the onboarding till they get to their, the a lot of a lot of people will call it an aha moment,
Hmm.
right? And at Uniform, we have something we call the first uniform moment.
Yeah.
right? So until they get to their first uniform moment or that aha moment, what are the bits? And you could decide to collect information along the way, right? So understanding the pricing model defines what amount of information you need on onboarding. Do you want to make sure this user is good for the money? So they are qualified. Do you want even qualify them during onboarding? Right, this would determine what steps, what processes you would put in place, what gates you would put, or if there are
Yeah.
any gates at all. Yeah.
And so, what are differences between? Because I've seen personally that some tools have
Yeah.
multiple ways of onboarding. Like, for example, when you go to
Hmm.
Forsell, you can kind of use their CLI, or you
Hmm.
can go through the website and then just do a few clicks. Why would a company like Forsell do both? Is that because they might have different audiences, or is it just a thing you do? Because I know at Uniform we also have multiple ways. So, what is your
Hmm.
opinion about that?
Yeah. So obviously, when you're building out an onboarding, flow, just like every other experience on the application, you will try to personalize this. And to
Yeah.
personalize, you need to understand your audience. So who's going to use this? If you have a tool like Facel that could be used by really technical folks that are, script ninjas and they live on the CLI, you want to, give them that power. And if you have, folks that are pretty much beginners or hobbyists that just want to deploy whatever website they've built, you want to give them a nice GUI that they can work on. So some of
Yeah.
these considerations are made when you think about the user. And also, when you think about using the application at scale, a lot of tools, you save a lot of time when you use something like a CLI rather than when you
Mhm.
go through like a GUI. And a good example would be AWS. You could do a lot
Oh,
of
I was
things with.
about to ask you about that because I've recently had to set up an S3 bucket just to put some
Yeah,
files in, but with a bit of
yeah,
security. So it's open with code and then it's closed again.
yeah,
I could not tell you again what buttons I have to click in their interface to actually set up
yeah,
another S3 bucket. I'm going to lose an
yeah,
afternoon again. So
yeah.
why do they have this? What is this
So
thing?
yeah, for AWS, I think that's like everyone says they prefer function over form,
Hmm.
right? So it's more of like how it works rather than maybe how it looks, and there's the whole customer service bit to that. But it's with S3, for instance, I typically would say if you want to do anything on AWS, you have to read like a tutorial each time, especially
Yeah.
if you do not do that all the time or you're like a front end developer. But obviously, the DevOps platform and platform engineers are pretty familiar with like these processes. They have they probably use some um, they they use more of the. I'm trying to
Like
remember. There's this.
scripts, I guess.
Yeah, they use
Scripting
more of
related things,
scripts.
right? Yeah.
Yeah, they use scripts and related things. There's this AWS tool. I always forget the name, but yeah, it just means you're going to have to write a lot of scripts to
Yeah.
provision like environment and AWS instances and services and the likes. But if you're like a hobbyist, like some of us, you just want to go to the dashboard, look through a tutorial, or use Chat GPT, click through a bunch of things, and
Yes,
set up an
exactly.
S3 bucket. Yeah.
Yeah, I might have to ask ChatGPT how to set up an S3 bucket because I don't remember anymore. But this is kind of like it's interesting, right? Because they have decided to be less friendly to the click around people and more friendly to the script kids, so we say, or the
Yeah.
DevOps scripters.
Yeah.
So let's say you are in, you kind of get it, you're happily using a tool, you have learned through the onboarding what that all
Hmm.
means, right? How do you then, what are the different ways to upsell the next tier? Like, what are
Okay.
the little carrots that you're dangling for people? How does that generally work?
Yeah. So I see it in three steps generally, right? I see first you give access, right? Limited access, about limited access. Second, you show value, right? You show value of what the user has currently and what they will have if they move to a higher plan. And
Mhm.
then lastly, you make it easy for them to switch to a higher plan. So the problem with a number of organizations is they have, one and two covered, right? So you get access to, the free tier, or the free portion of the application. You see the value in upgrading, but sometimes it's a tad difficult to upgrade, right? They have
Yeah.
like a number of processes. Then they could have some extensive qualification that needs to come into place before you can move up one plan.
But I can
But
imagine it's quite worth it because if you have your free tiers relative, it could be that you choose that your free tier shows value, but it's relatively limited. And when you want to
yeah,
go up, there's new features that you have to learn about. So I can
yeah,
imagine you're gating that quite a bit. So when you go up, you actually get like a meeting with like somebody to help you to kind of
yeah,
make that happen, right? So sometimes you
yeah,
just have to gate it down. That kind of makes
yeah.
sense to me.
Yeah, it does make sense to get it down. And a very important thing also is to set clear expectations from the get-go.
Hmm.
So if a new user
Yes.
comes in, they see they're on the free tier, right? These are the limits they have right off the bat. And this is what is a clear next step if they want to upgrade. If they want to, move to they want to move to the next tier, this is what they need to do. If they want to get value from the current tier, this is where they need to go. These are the boundaries that currently exist.
Yeah. And you know what? I just remembered if you go to Jamstack.conf and you go on the website, because
Yeah,
Jamstack.conf is clearly for developers, right? But there's
yeah,
some sort of really interesting upsell there as well. It's not a SaaS, I know. But when you look
yeah.
at this website, you go there as a developer, you look at the speakers and you really love it, right? And then there's a
Hmm.
page that says convince your boss. And this is the email you're going to write
Yeah,
to your boss
yeah,
to be able to go there.
yeah,
You know, to me that is like marketing upsell developer awesomeness, right?
yeah.
Those kind of these are pretty cool tricks. And
Hmm.
so in your opinion, using SaaS tools, right, what is
Hmm.
the most valuable way of upselling that makes everybody the happiest, shall we say?
Yeah.
It
So,
might be a personal thing, and based on the type of SaaS it might change, obviously, but there you go.
yeah, yeah. So I like to focus on the value that's being derived, right? And obviously, if it's a
Mhm.
SaaS that has a moat, so there's like a clear differentiation between all the other products,
Yeah.
and the pricing sits very, very close to this value that's being delivered. Then there's a very strong incentive to upgrade. Take for instance, yeah, I just have GPT in my head,
Why
but
not?
take,
We'll go for it.
yeah, take for instance, we had Chat GPT hit a couple of million users in
Yeah.
a couple of days or weeks. It wasn't
Yeah, it
even,
was, I think it
yeah,
was the best release of software in history.
yeah, yeah. In a
Yeah.
couple of days, crossed the million users. You can see there's a very clear value proposition there,
Yes.
even though it was internally a freemium tool, right? So
Mhm.
we all started with like the free version. When they released the Chat GPT Plus, a lot of people jumped on it. It was like a no-brainer, right? Even before it was released, folks were already like, yeah, if you ask me to pay for this, I will pay for this. So with ChatGPT, there's a clear differentiation. The
Yeah.
pricing is based on the value that you would get, not some arbitrary, um, you know, would I say arbitrary offering from OpenAI, but it's directly tied to like usage and stuff like that. So
Yeah, and
um
so I guess when you have something that grows like very fast, this like ChatGPT, for example, it's just the
yeah.
amount of how often or how many requests you can give that you just upscale. Or maybe it's also more performant, so you get your first in the queue or something.
Yeah. So that would bring me to how exactly do you price how do you
Yeah.
price software, right? So to price software, there are a number of variables. The first variable, the value proposition and your moat. So what exactly is this tool? How difficult is this problem? How frequent is this problem?
Yeah.
Then you look at competitors, right? So what are competitors saying? What are they charging for this to even have competitors? Because for some tools, you basically do not have that. So you have like that
Yeah.
advantage. Yeah. Next, you're looking at the cost of goods, right? That's an accounting term as well. But you're looking at cost of goods sold, which is how much does it cost to make this? If it's software, what does it take to provision, an instance or
Exactly.
per
Yeah.
yeah per user? What would this take for us to spin up like a new, in case of Chat GPT, a new instance or a new interface for them.
Yeah.
Server cost, you break it down to the unit. What would this cost? Then you look at your typical buyer persona. So who do you want to attract? Are they like, do you want to attract the, the everyday user that's willing to pay, $10 out of pocket and it's nothing? Or do you want to go for the heavy hitters that are looking at like, a couple hundred thousands per year, or even running up to 1 million per year, right? And
Yeah.
then
Yeah. Exactly.
lastly, which I think is the most important, thing to consider when defining how or what to charge, you need to consider your users. You want to talk to them. So if you have like a
Mhm.
free tier, you want to talk to folks in the free tier and be like, yeah, how much are you going to pay for this? So that's also a measure of how much value you've been able to deliver, right? So if you might be delivering value, but that's perceived value on your end, right? When you talk
Yes,
to the
of
users,
course.
you
If you
find
build
out.
your own products,
Yeah,
you're delivering value because you're literally building it. You're scratching
exactly.
your own itch, essentially. Yeah.
Exactly. So for you, it's perceived value. For the user, it's actual value they're
Yeah.
getting out of it. So in your own world, the price should be, enormous. It should be astronomical because this is insane. It's your
Yes.
baby, and
Yeah.
your
Yeah.
baby is never
Exactly.
ugly.
No.
Yeah.
No. Every
So
baby is beautiful.
it's beautiful. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. But when you talk to your users, they tell you, "Oh man, I'm sorry, I can't pay. This, or I can easily pay, $100, or wow, this is amazing. I can get my company to pay, X thousand per month for this because
Yeah.
it's really useful. It saves us this much money, right? So when you put all these together, you've gotten all these facts together. If you have like a sweetener, or you see that your moat is like, it's really good, like OpenAI and ChatGPT,
Hmm.
right? At the time when it was launched, there wasn't like any clear competitor for it, right? So when you
Yeah.
look at all these, you can decide to, yeah, let's put this at this amount, and when we do that, this is how many users, this is what the total addressable market looks like, and this is what they are able to pay
Yeah, because
for
I can
this.
imagine if your total addressable market is a bit smaller, but they're all more
Yeah,
enterprisey, for example,
yeah.
I can imagine that something like enablement
Mm-hmm.
actually can help a lot with upselling. But I just said
Yeah,
this word enablement, and when I joined Uniform, which is a pretty
yeah.
long time ago, I didn't know what that was. It was done to me all the time. I just didn't have
Yeah,
the name for it. And
yeah,
so, can you talk about what enablement means in a SaaS company?
yeah. Yeah. So typically, like simply put, enablement is, I call it teaching, right?
Mhm.
Teaching and yeah, teaching your users or your customers how to use your product, and eventually refining the product with the feedback you get from these users. So it's a two-way street, right? You don't just
Yeah,
teach and thumbs up. So you teach, you get feedback from them. You see, just like every good teacher, you see,
exactly.
what works, what doesn't work, what they don't get, and then you refine the product based on feedback you get from these enablement activities. And yeah, to enable a user, there's the training aspect. You need to train them to use your product. The more complex the product, the more enablement you would need. And for every experience, again, you would want to personalize your enablement as much as possible, right? Especially when you have a complex product, because for each user, while they will have similar problems, the use cases will be different, right? So
Yeah.
for as much as you can personalize the experience, the better for you. Also, you want to support them. So even after like training the user, you want to provide ad hoc support. You want to check in, like, hey, is this working, or are you utilizing this
Yeah, it's
this
like
concept
finger
we
on the
talked about?
pulse kind of thing. Because I can
Yeah.
imagine enablement is also a really nice way to
Hmm.
explain things in the right context. So when people say,
Hmm.
you know what, I don't want to upsell because I don't really know why I would need that feature.
Yeah.
Somebody in enablement can actually shape the perception that you have of that feature in your context of your company.
Yeah.
So I think it's a
Exactly.
really valuable tool there, right?
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. Personalized enablement, I think that's where there is a lot of value. General enablement is valuable, but making it as personalized for a user, that's where, like, immense value. also lies. And then lastly, there's the bit around like, monitoring, performance of enablement, what works, what
Hmm.
doesn't work, see how enablement drives or reduces churn on the user. So for SaaS, for SaaS product, some of the metrics you would look at is churn rate, right? So while you've
Yeah.
gotten a customer in, do they drop off, or does the lifetime value just keep increasing beyond like your expectation? And
Hmm.
enablement plays a big part in this as well, especially because with SaaS there's always going to be like incremental improvements to the product. There's going to be new versions, releases,
Oh yeah, of course. You're
stuff
gonna
like
have
that.
to update all that stuff all the time.
Yeah. So enablement is more of like a living process. It isn't one time. And as you enable users, you need to monitor performance of this, and you need to be proactive, right? So you need to understand, get live, active feedback from the
Yeah.
user and update the enablement with that as well.
Because back in the day when I didn't work at a product company, I worked at agencies, right?
Hmm.
And what we
Hmm.
saw, but this I've never seen this from a startup. This is more like the more old school-ish DXP or ERP type companies, right? What they would do,
Yeah.
and I'm not sure if this good or bad because I don't have the context, right? But when back then, it almost felt like they made the software so complicated that I had to get certified.
Yeah.
And then you go to the certification class or whatever you want to call it. It was still in person back then. You would almost know more than the teacher, but that you just go over like a few slides and then
Yeah.
you get a certification. But we had to pay for that. And so it's almost like they would make money for
Yeah.
something that's very complicated, then you had to have certification, and like all these things were so messy in that sense. But
Hmm.
I have not seen that at all with any startups. Do you know what the tipping point is to go back to like a more clean approach that we have now? Or is it just because these companies are perhaps older, have more history, and it just slips in as a piece of like new business or something? Do you have any
Yeah.
opinion here? Maybe it's just me who had this weird
Yeah.
experience.
Yeah. So there's this book I read on pricing models. I can't remember the name. I'll find that and share it with you. But
Mm,
one of like the models there is to sell software and also package enablement with the software. So the software is so complex, but at the same time, it is so valuable, right?
exactly. That's the thing, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So it's so valuable, but then access to usage of that software or the expertise at least at that time, isn't readily available, right? You don't just go on YouTube and you already see someone has put up a video on how to use it, and you can take a crash course. So there wasn't
No,
that.
that
So
doesn't exist in that. That's just a
yeah,
different world. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. So there was always, this is the software, it's very valuable. We've had like demos, you know, proof of concept. You see that this works, but to use this, we need to enable you to use it right. We need to enable you to see, the value in that. But enablement itself of that magnitude costs man hours, right?
Yes.
And on the enterprise grade, that's a lot of cheddar.
Yeah, but I can also imagine like if you have something that's extremely valuable, but it has a bit of
Yeah.
a learning curve, it
Hmm.
somehow seems to work that way. And only the unicorns out there are extremely simple, have no learning curve, and have immediate huge value. You see a few of them clearly,
Yeah.
but a
Yeah.
lot is actually more, it's the business world
Hmm.
online is very nuanced, and you have to
Yeah.
fit things in and they become complex. Not everybody has the same context. So with that
Yeah.
in mind, it actually makes sense not to have a free tier, but kind of to gate it. So when people
Hmm.
do come in, that they actually understand what they're doing. And
Yeah.
so how do you actually attract new users and work with users and feedback loops and stuff like that when you don't have a free tier? Do you think your
Okay.
marketing is different, or is your enablement approach different? Like, what is your opinion or maybe your knowledge around this?
Yeah. So typically, because you don't have, the ability for random users to come in to, check out the product, and probably because of the pricing or the revenue piece down the line, you want to have qualified users. So,
Hmm.
the funnel will be optimized, right? You have quality throughout the funnel, not just everything. There are a number of things you could do, right, to attract users. Um, first, what most people have is you have product demos, right? And with
Yeah.
these product demos, you invest a lot of time into communicating the value of your product. Obviously, there's going to be a lot of upfront work to sourcing these users or reaching out to these users. There's going to be a lot of outbound marketing.
Yeah.
Um,
Right.
yeah, there's going to be a lot of outbound marketing to match inbound marketing as well. And when you get to these users, the product demo has to be top notch. So that's something a lot of like enterprise companies rely on, is the demo.
Yeah.
Also, I've seen a number of tools that have some form of product tour, right? So in a
Oh
product
yeah,
tour,
exactly.
yeah, yeah. So you go in like you have an account, but you actually do not. You have dummy data. You go in, you can test out the product, see how the feature works, look at user experience, and if you want to convert towards being a user, you want access, you can then request for access. This also, I see this commonly with tools that are really complex, and also tools that require some form of like provisioning and security
Mm.
as well.
Yeah, yeah,
With
exactly.
yeah, with financial technology tools. So in Europe, there's Klarna, right? And Klarna is very big. Aside like the payment space, they're also like in the e-commerce space,
Mm.
building like storefront providers, checkout providers, order management systems, and these systems, to use them or to get the most value out of them, you you would want to they would want to at least qualify you and then know that you're going to convert towards becoming a paying user. But
Exactly.
if you just want to play with the system, you just want to see what's available, they give you like a sample store you can click around on. They give you like a
Yeah, yeah,
demo order
exactly.
system
Mm.
with sample orders just to see how things work. Right? You don't have to get into Klarna itself to try out the app or create an account, because literally
It wouldn't
you
make so
wouldn't make
much sense,
yeah, it wouldn't make so
right?
much sense to you,
I had something
right?
like this. I was talking to someone who works at a PIM system, and
Yeah,
so product inventory management. So I thought, okay, so it's
yeah,
just a product data model, and you enrich a
hmm
little bit and make some connections, and you're good. Turns
hmm
out they have 500 API endpoints. Everything is custom for every customer. It makes
Woo.
zero sense for me to just log in and understand it.
Yeah,
I'm
true.
not going to happen. And so
Hmm.
this is something I just want to talk about this, because the
Yeah,
more we discuss these things and the more I learn
hmm
about our space, is that
hmm
developers, I'm one of those, I know, but we can sometimes be
hmm
a bit pedantic, I guess, because I saw this lovely
yeah,
tweet thread from somebody that says, okay, I want to try two vendors. They do similar things, right? One is a
hmm
free tier, I just go in and try, and the other one is a gated free tier. And then they
yeah,
were complaining that this gated thing took a bit long and it was a bit hard to get. But
yeah,
in the end, he didn't buy either of them, because the one that he went in for free, he didn't get it.
yeah, yeah.
And then the one that had a little gate in it to teach, it took him too long. And so he didn't do anything.
He didn't do
And to me, that's
anything. Yeah,
such a developer move to just be so
yeah,
fast with judging
yeah,
and like, let me just click around. I have experience, right? One of
yeah,
those.
yeah,
And
yeah.
actually, I think in one of those systems that you need a bit more enablement, if that enablement step or that gate is like super smooth, I
hmm
think it's actually a boost for the product,
Yeah,
right?
I
You
think
might
so
like
too.
it more if that enablement is
Yeah,
so cool, right?
yeah, yeah. So for such products, I typically would recommend that enablement step has to be super smooth, right?
Hmm.
Because putting a gate, you're already asking for some commitment upfront from the
Exactly.
user, right? And with the internet these days, attention spans are fleeting, right?
Oh
So you
yeah.
want to be able, yeah, you want to be able to capture the user, and you're asking for their attention to, hey, reach out to us and we will contact you sometime, right? You if you want to, you make it as efficient as possible. You want to say, we're going to reach out to you in a couple of minutes, or we're going to reach out to you in an hour
Yeah,
to
at least
to
same
get
day
the
or
access.
somehow, and then next day it
Yeah,
works.
yeah. Just communicate some time frame. Communicate like what to expect, when to expect this access, rather than saying, hey, we're going to reach out to you, and you never
And then we have too many inbound leads, so maybe tomorrow. That's not the way to go. Because I've had it
yeah.
where I had to use, it was some headless CMS, I think. I don't remember
Hmm.
exactly which, but I had to use it. It was somewhere last year. And
Yeah.
so they have a gated approach as well, but there was not even a contact us. So we had to go through a partner, and it took them
Oh,
2 weeks to provision something. And then
yeah.
they didn't actually explain to me how it works. As you see, and now it's probably obvious, right? And
Yeah.
so I did
Yeah.
certainly not use that. It's
Yeah.
so it's a smart business decision to go that way, but then you have to do it really
Hmm.
well. And so there's many examples, I guess.
Yeah,
Um,
there are quite a number of them, and again, it depends on what are the revenue objectives for these users,
exactly.
right? There are some companies. A friend of mine works at this or consults for this marketplace that they are like a marketplace for marketplaces. So if you don't
Oh
want to
wow.
build your own, yeah, if you don't want to build an app marketplace, right? Like, a lot of tools like have like their own application marketplace where you can developers can build theirs like Slack and put it up there. If you don't want to
Hmm.
build yours, they can host one for you.
That's pretty cool, though.
Yeah, but that's pretty cool, pretty complex. For them, they
Yes.
have a couple tens, like less than 100 clients, but they're doing several tens of millions a year in
Yeah.
revenue, right? With a handful of clients, a handful of like customers. So for them,
Yeah.
they don't mind if you spend 1 month in their pipeline, so long as they qualify you properly and they know
Yes.
that you are going to convert to to becoming, or there's a very high chance you're going to become one of their clients.
So
So it
for
depends on the
them,
revenue.
a deal length is quite long, but once somebody
Yeah.
is in, it
Hmm.
generally works, right?
Yeah, it exactly generally works.
Mm.
That's what needs to be considered. Users will not understand this because everyone has like their own expectations, and people have like
Yeah.
stuff they are used to. They expect that a lot of tools will have like free tier, especially developers. We're used to 2 seconds you're already in and you're looking
I am
through like what's there.
always like that. Like, but
Yeah.
actually, I'm the more I learn about the space, and I thought I knew a
Hmm.
lot. But you always see the
Hmm.
community teaches you back, right? I'm always
Yeah.
one of those people like, oh, just give me a free tier. It's always open. Everything should be always open. That's
Yeah.
why I didn't like these older DXP systems where you couldn't just get it, because I
Yeah.
wouldn't for the life of me understand how to install a system like that. So,
Hmm.
but I was never happy with that. But the more you think about it, it actually makes more sense. And I think this enablement step is actually
Hmm.
sales as well and marketing.
Yeah.
Because if
It
that
is.
enablement step works well for a developer and for, let's say, some business oriented user,
Hmm.
you get much more ammunition as a person that uses the tool to tell their bosses, we need to buy this thing,
Yeah, for
right?
sure. Yeah,
You
you're
can
you're
shape the
empowered to.
perception.
Yeah, you're empowered, and the thing I usually say that when folks consider the buyers in an organization, they are the decision makers, but they are also influencers within the
Yeah.
organization that determine if this tool is going to be bought or not.
Yes.
The folks that will be in the CMO's ear saying, "Hey, no, I don't know how to use this tool," or "What does it even
And
do?"
but that's very important because imagine you go
Yeah,
in, you look at a tool, and you are like one of these developers that thinks they understand it all. They exist. There's
yeah,
lots of them. I
yeah,
know. I've been like that.
yeah,
And then you
yeah,
might not understand it, and you have a bit of an icky feeling because you haven't gone over the hump yet. And then you
yeah.
might tell your business, maybe let's not put these on the short list. That's not a good
Yeah,
thing, right? Yeah, it
yeah.
makes sense.
That's not. And a lot of these, folks are pretty influential,
Yeah,
right, in organizations, even though they are not decision makers, right? So I feel
exactly.
also folks need to consider them with enablement and onboarding. And also, when you'd asked about how do you convince folks to to buy your tool or to try your
Yeah.
tool when you do not have like a free model. A good strategy that's worked is employing customer stories and social proof, right? So you
Oh
want,
yeah, exactly.
yeah, you want like a lot of your users, your existing customers to to talk about your product. You want to have use cases with them, showcasing the value they've gotten from your product, and you want this to be loud and you want it to be out there. So
Yeah.
just about anyone that's considering your product stumbles on this. And recommendation and referral, that's like has a very strong, influence on the buying decision of users. Social proof too, when you see a lot of your current users or your, folks that have tried your software
Hmm.
go and say, wow, this is amazing. This tool is great. It helped us, drive revenue upwards, 20, 30% month on month or year on year, for the last 2 years. Yeah,
There you
stuff
go.
like that
Yeah.
definitely, yeah, definitely drives, the conversion from, just a random user to, yeah, I want to buy this too.
And
Yeah.
so when we talk about, let's say you don't have a free tier, right? And so you have this little
Mm-hmm.
gate in place and you need to
Mm-hmm.
somehow get these users in. And
Mm-hmm.
so, of course, lots of companies have developer relations people.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think if it's there's no free tier, is it DevRel or is it maybe evangelism? Is it like do these things start to change now? Because evangelism is essentially just creating social proof and kind of shouting it off the rooftops without being annoying to developers,
Yeah.
right? Where in DevRel it's a little closer to the fire of the developers. Like how do
Yeah.
you see that?
Mm-hmm. So again, I see that folks that are, talking about a product, or selling a product or providing support, they also have to sit close to the business. They need to understand what are the requirements
Hmm.
of the business, right? And how do they get users to, see this value in the business. At
Yeah,
times, for certain products, you would have folks that are in, what would I call them, developer relations, move from the developer advocacy side towards
yeah,
more of like evangelism, right?
yeah,
Because typically most even enterprise companies have evangelists that are not developer evangelists. They are
exactly.
rainmakers and, evangelists trying to build social proof and talk about like the product
Yeah.
and try to make it not sound like marketing, right?
Yeah, because
So
I think essentially that's if you want to talk to people who are slightly technical, it shouldn't feel like marketing or buzzwords. I think
yeah,
that might
yeah.
be a nice definition of all these things.
Yeah, yeah. Just that's I think that's the best form of marketing actually, is make it not look like marketing, except where it's like this is explicit marketing. This is what you need to put in.
Yes,
This is
exactly.
what you
That
get
makes
out
sense.
of it. Yeah,
I always
then
say,
you should
like,
do
for
that.
example, when people ask me, hey, how does DevRel market? What I tend to say
Yeah,
is imagine you're shooting a commercial for
yeah,
a barbecue sauce. I'm just going to go
yeah,
weird with this. Imagine this is your barbecue sauce, right? The
yeah.
way you show that commercial, the way I think it works best, is you just show
Mm-hmm.
an amazing recipe,
Mm-hmm.
right? You're cooking the thing, you're explaining how it works, people get excited
Yeah,
about it, but the sauce is just on the side. You might use it,
yeah,
you might not, but the sauce is there
yeah,
because you represent the sauce. But that's
yeah,
it. And if
yeah.
you do that
True.
long enough and the context works every time, people start to
Yeah,
associate that sauce with amazing cooking. And
yeah.
then there you
True.
go, right? It's just perception building. And
Yeah.
I'm quite excited to see how that works with different startups that have free tier or no free tier or a gate.
Mm-hmm.
And I think enablement can play a huge role there as well.
Yeah, yeah, enablement plays a huge role. Also, support, right? So
Oh yeah.
a good example I have is with BigCommerce. So I know BigCommerce has always had a gate, even though they are a headless,
Yes.
e-commerce service, right? To use
Hmm.
BigCommerce, you sign up. They have like a free tier that's like hidden. You have to try to log in and then switch to sign up before you see the free,
Ah,
the
so they
ability
do
to,
that on
yeah,
purpose, right? To help you
yeah,
enable to understand what you're getting.
yeah, yeah.
Mm.
So for the first time I tried to sign up to BigCommerce, I ended up in their community, right? And I spoke
Hmm.
to like a developer advocate that was there and like, got some, I already know what like, headless commerce does. I was just looking for what's the differentiator between them was BigCommerce and Shopify, right? Why
Yeah,
don't I use like Shopify APIs instead of like BigCommerce? But in the
exactly.
community, I could like, I'd already come really close to the product. I could see like some of the features they had. I could see the recent releases they put out. I was like, wow, okay, this is amazing. And I think it didn't take a couple of hours. I got access to to BigCommerce to try it out, create products, and add integrations. Right. So
Yeah, that's actually a
yeah.
pretty nice flow.
Mhm. Yeah,
unless you
it
have a
is.
million people who come in.
Yeah, yeah, except that, right? But I think for products like, like BigCommerce, it's already, they're solving an established problem, right?
Yeah.
It's
So
nothing
people know why
new.
they go there. Mhm.
Exactly. So people know why they go there. They know what to expect at least 90% of the way. And then when they go in there, they are going in there to find like what's the differentiator from, competitors.
Yeah.
And that also gives BigCommerce the ability to qualify a user before, they come in and waste some software resources
Yeah,
for them.
exactly.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I have one last question. Because
Okay.
in the beginning, you spoke a bit about
Hmm.
like these aha moments, the thing that makes a
Yeah.
conversion for a user, right? Can you
Hmm.
give like a fun example or a good example of what an aha moment could be and make it concrete? Just name a brand, if you had one, right? What would it be?
Yeah. So if I had a brand, it would be TikTok.
Okay, here we go.
Uh, Yeah. So it would be TikTok. If the first time I came across TikTok, right? I like to think I'm a very self-aware person. So I'm usually very conscious
Okay.
of scrolling through social media and not getting
Hmm.
sucked in it so I can do other stuff. But when someone sent me a video during, I think it was during the pandemic, of from TikTok, it was just a link, right? They sent
Yeah.
it to me, they're like, yo, man, you need to check this out. I click the
Yeah.
link, it opens up in my browser. I saw the video, it was really hilarious.
Hmm.
While I was still laughing, the video ends, and then another video that's similar to that pops up, right? And I literally just watched that as well,
And you were
continued
gone.
laughing, and another one pops up. And
Yeah.
I was like, yeah. And I think then I was standing and just checked it out. And I stood there for 15 minutes without doing anything and just videos, the same videos. And because I didn't touch that, the algorithm was like, okay, cool, this guy likes these videos. Let's just keep
Yes.
showing him more stuff
Yeah.
like this. And when I stopped, I was like, aha. So this is
There you
how
go.
this works. Like I was already sucked in. I was already like, I could see the value of like how TikTok was going to be like huge because
Exactly.
it was just amazing, right? And it didn't take me what it just took one video and a couple of seconds after for me to
Yeah.
realize, what the proposition of TikTok was, right? Obviously, there's going to be other side quests like allowing creators to, monetize their content. There's the allowing people to be
Yeah.
more expressive, to learn, allowing companies
Exactly.
advertise products. But for them, I think the aha moment is for a user, it's that moment where a video ends and it just goes to the next thing that you want to see,
So they
right?
understand you. So
Yeah, they
to me,
understand that.
what would be the aha moment for TikTok for a
Mhm.
creator?
For a creator. So I
Yes,
think,
because yeah.
I think for a creator, that it could be you would start to think, what would a creator want out of this? So the aha moment always starts from what's the value to be derived from this product, right? So for a creator, it could be I want to create this and I want to get one anonymous view on my video, right? That's like I didn't share this, I didn't put this anywhere. How did I, get someone to see this? Because creators,
Mhm.
obviously, we care about reach of our content,
Yes,
right? So
exactly.
TikTok, when you create a video, they suggest tips on, hey, this is how you can make your video reach a wider audience. You
Mhm.
post it, and it actually does reach a wider audience. Once that happens, from the first anonymous or the first random view, you're already incentivized. You're already feeling like, yeah, I get this too now. I get this is how it works. This is what I need to do. Then you start to learn ways to even make better use of the tool.
Yeah.
That's what I think. But I always anchor the aha moment to the first time a user derives value from an application. And to understand that, you need to know what's valuable to that user.
And that also means the aha moment can be very small,
Yeah.
right? It could be
Yep.
I publish my page in some headless CMS and suddenly there's something on the screen, and that was very
Hmm.
easy. That can be an
Yeah.
aha moment too, right?
Yeah. That is
Mhm.
that is that is an aha moment if it's valuable to the user, and again, the software or the team is intentional about showcasing that feature to the user, right?
Yeah,
Then
exactly.
it becomes, but there are some products that the aha moment probably isn't what was intended by the
That is also
creators.
a thing like, oh, this kind of sucks. My
Yeah.
aha is nope. That exists,
Yeah.
I guess. But
Mhm.
then,
Yeah.
if you have good onboarding and good enablement, you will
Hmm.
likely steer away from that problem.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mhm.
You would likely, and there's something I learned from building this is actually like one thing I learned is sometimes the best form of onboarding is no onboarding.
Okay.
Yeah. So for instance, when I was building this e-commerce product in Dubai, um, we had like designs for the screen, React Native. We had like a splash screen. We had
Mhm.
we had a splash screen. We had you come into the app. There's the sign up, or you sign in into the app. Give us some information about your location so we can show you
Yeah.
products that are in your area,
Yeah.
right? But we saw that users would drop off once we started ask like random questions. Even though at that time online grocery delivery was starting to become a thing during the pandemic,
Hmm.
users were not, they're used to going to their regular brick and mortar stores to buy stuff.
Exactly.
So
Yeah.
what we thought was good onboarding, it's free. It's minimum commitment. Like we're asking those so we can personalize your experience, was actually hurting us. Right. And the moment we
Ah,
took out,
interesting.
yeah, we took out those bits. Don't bother, don't worry about signing up. Do not tell us, we don't even need your phone number, we don't need your address. We try to identify your address. That's the only thing we ask for. Is once you come into the app, you open up the app, you immediately see products. You
Yeah. Yeah.
see
Yeah.
groceries right in front of you, right? A couple of seconds, we ask for permission to, for your location, so we know we can serve you from stores around you. If you give us permission, we show you products, similar products from stores around you this time around, right? But if you do not give us permission, you can still like browse the app, but you can add stuff to cart. We have like a local cart
Yeah.
that's hosted in the app, so users can, they get a feel of the experience even without creating an account, without any form of onboarding. What we did after we saw that this worked and we saw more interaction in the app is we started micro adding like micro onboarding bits
Yeah.
throughout the app, right?
Here
So
and
we
there
added
pop up to
yeah,
ask you for your like location or some like your phone number
exactly.
or
Yeah.
yeah, because I've been thinking about onboarding in a simpler way even. If you go to
Hmm.
let's say Amazon or
Yeah.
eBay, these
Hmm.
websites look so ugly. But the
Yeah.
thing is, that's actually a feature of onboarding because you feel like you
Yeah.
can buy or sell something there and it's for
Yeah.
everybody. Because when you
Hmm.
go to the Chanel website, you don't feel like you're like, at least for me, I'm not going to buy something there because,
Yeah.
well, I might to buy a present for my wife or something, but I'm not
Yeah.
going to buy Chanel men's shoes or glasses because it's so high end. So my
Yeah.
onboarding somehow by the vision of the brand is less smooth.
Yeah.
And they always have bigger forms because when I worked for these type of companies, they would say only people that are worthy will fill out these forms,
Yeah.
right? So they scope
Yeah.
down their customer base on
Yeah.
purpose. Same if you want to
Yeah.
buy a watch or something. You have to
Yeah.
actually go to the shop. You cannot even get it online. You can just look at
Yeah.
it. And so that's also a form of onboarding, I imagine. If you just have a
Yeah.
very simple interface, it just directs you to one thing.
Hmm.
It's relatively cool, right? You probably
Yeah.
need less. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. A lot of like, I've seen tools where the onboarding is more passive, right? It's
Hmm.
like inception. You try to put thoughts in your head so
If you
that
do it the
you
right
eventually
way, you
convert.
manipulate
Yeah.
the user essentially.
Yeah. It's like some
Yeah.
some like insane psychology. It does work, right? Um, so yeah, I've seen also onboarding like a good strategy. Folks using onboarding sometimes, especially for enterprise products without a free tier, is to offer a money back guarantee,
Ah,
right?
okay.
Yeah. So this is basically playing the trust card that says,
Yeah. Yeah.
I
Yeah.
trust my product, that I trust it enough that you're going to find extreme value from it. And if you do not, it's okay. I'm going to give you back your money. Right. And that also converts. But to do that, obviously, you need to you need to trust the product enough, and there needs to be, a clear way to measure value so that it's not subjective, right?
Oh
It
yeah.
has to be as objective as
Exactly.
possible. To
You're not going to give
Yeah.
money back very soon as a SaaS. So I imagine,
Yeah.
yeah, you really want to get that. Anyways,
Yeah.
the time is flying. Is there any last thought that you have that you might want to share? And if not, where can people find you? So, which way
Yeah.
do we go?
So I think the last words I would have is that, I'm very big on like analytics and understanding like user
Hmm.
journey. So whatever, system, whatever process you go with on, with like onboarding and pricing, so long as there is, some way to understand, what the users want, how the users behave on the application, I think that's great. That's something that should be considered first,
Hmm.
even before you start building out the flow, in my opinion.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. Last words, and then where to find me? Yeah, but I'm always hanging out on Twitter. I'm
Yeah, I
there
see it in
every
your
now and then.
username. I'm always have to like, oh yeah, here.
Oh, oh yeah, it's
Yeah, you have it
here.
in the exactly perfect.
Yeah.
It's pretty hard to get that right. I always miss it, and I do this a
Yeah.
lot, right?
Yeah. I guess if you just raise your hand up, you find out like where it is. Like
Exactly.
just point. Yeah.
All
But
right.
yeah, you can find me on Twitter at iTrilo. And this has been amazing to be on the stream.
You know what? This might be the stream where I learned the most while I work at the industry that you're teaching me about. So this is good stuff.
Yeah.
Thank you very much for your time, dude. I appreciate it.
Yeah. Thank you so much for having me, Tim.
All right. And we're ending the stream with the most viewers. How about that? We're ending on a high note. Thank you so much, dude.
Really
Yes.
nice one, man.
Oh, wait. Before
Yeah.
we end, we have
Yeah.
we have Elias saying, "Go, William." Thanks, dude.
Go, Elias.
Exactly. Cheers,
Yeah, man.
everyone. Have a good one, and I'll see you
All
next
right.
week.
All right, Tim.
Thanks.
See you.
Bye bye.
Cheers.